5, and we'll start the recording now. All right, so welcome everybody to the November meeting of the Curriculum and Instruction Advisory Committee. Thank you to everybody who was able to make it tonight. I know that at our sites we have parent conferences taking place, and so 2 of our teacher members let me know that they had conferences scheduled during this time, and so they were going to miss the meeting. So we will miss them, but we have plenty of people here for a quorum, and so we'll continue forward. Susan Candio Hernandez, who was elected as our chairperson last month, is going to run most of the meeting. But in order to kick us off, I'm going to read public comment. We have a Google form that we open up for people who would like to share their thoughts about something with us. And we did have 4 people who submitted a public comment today, so I will be reading those. Before we start that though, one position that we were unable to fill last month was that of a secretary. I wonder if there's anyone who would be willing to take the minutes for us just for this meeting. You don't have to take the job on for the rest of your life, but I could share a template with you, and if there's somebody who would just be willing to take minutes tonight, that would be great.
I can do it, Kim.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me share. I'm going to just okay, thank you, Jamie. All right, welcome to Mr. Cruz. Good to see you. Okay, so let me just take a couple minutes and I will read our public comments. And in the minutes, Jamie, once that document gets open, you'll see I've already input the names of the people, but what you need to include is just a sentence or 2 that summarizes the comments that they shared with us. So our first public comment comes from Marie Hughes. And here's what she has shared with us. When I was a child, I lived in poverty in a community that did not value education, was suspicious of expertise, and firmly convinced that women should shut up and make babies. It was by reading that I learned the whole world was not like that. That gave me hope and some skills to break out of the cycle of poverty I was born into. It gave me hope that there was another path for me. Reading is more than something you do in order to pass English. It's a window into other worlds. That's why it's so important that this window be wide and diverse one. Our children need to see what possibilities there are in the world, and they can't do that if all their books reinforce the worldview of a small portion of the population. Please broaden our curriculum and add more books by women, by POC, LGBTQ+, and other authors. Our children need and deserve this. All right, our next comment comes from Amal Nanavati. And Amal says, FUSD's English curriculum led me to associate American with white. That led to feelings of inherent incompatibility between my Indianness and my Americanness, which constrained me for years past graduation. This tension especially played out in the way I understood my gayness, because I grew to associate gayness with American/white and as incompatible with Indianness, partly due to the lack of representation of LGBTQ+ people of color. An English curriculum has the potential to connect us with a whole range of human experiences, and the fact that ours only represented a narrow subset of experiences and represented those experiences as the norm led to years of struggle and internalized hatred that continues to affect me today. We must diversify the novels with books written by and about people of color, LGBTQ+ people, differently abled people, etc. Our next comment comes from an anonymous source. And this person says, when I was a student in FUSD, I was always very aware that I wasn't normal. Despite growing up in a majority city like Fremont, my understanding of normal defaulted to white, cisgender, straight, and middle-class people. Quote, normal ruled FUSD, and FUSD taught me to hate myself and my own community. As a queer Asian American, I never saw myself represented in our literature. I was never given the opportunity to understand how white supremacy, queer phobia, and capitalism intersected with my identity and experiences. It was only until I went to college and doing my own research that I realized that I didn't have to feel abnormal, that I didn't have to hate myself or my community. Literature that is representative and liberation-based is essential to how our students understand the world, and more importantly, in how to understand our own community. And our final comment comes from Shana Kothari. Shana says, the majority of students FUSD serves are minorities, but the curriculum that FUSD teaches does not show that. I'm an FUSD alum who attended FUSD schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. And the curriculum I was taught in school was very white and not at all reflective of America's diversity or the diversity of the schools that I attended. In high school, I took 5 English classes, but only read 2 books by non-white authors, both in the year of global literature, despite the fact that their authors were American. The books I read were also almost exclusively by male authors. Under the current set of FUSD core novels, students are only required to read 1 book by a non-white author from 7th to 12th grade. I encourage you to consider changing the core and supplementary novels students engage with. And that concludes our public comment. So just as a point of protocol, public comment is not something that we carry into a conversation in this meeting. It's simply an opportunity for members of the public to share their thoughts with us about items that are on the agenda or not on the agenda. So thank you very much for your respectful attention to those. I appreciate it. What I'd like to do now, Susan, if it's okay with you, is turn the meeting over to you. I'll show the slide deck, if that's okay, and then you can work your way through that. And I think you might be on mute.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yep.
Okay. I have a question before we start, Kim.
Sure.
Are we going to reflect the comments in the minutes from public comment or not?
Yes, Jamie's taking the minutes for us, and she's going to summarize just with a line or two
Okay.
what was sort of the base theme of each public comment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, give me a second and I will share my screen. All right. Oh, that doesn't. So you're probably seeing, not seeing presentation view, huh? Okay.
No.
Okay, how about now? Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, so let me get in a couple of slides here. And just a note for those of you who might have joined that, just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. We did receive some public comment, which we have accepted already. And so now, Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Is there anybody that's new to our meeting today that wasn't present at the last meeting? Okay, because I can't see everybody. All right, welcome everybody on such a blustery, cold November day. I'd like you to look at the agenda. We have included the bylaws that you can read at your leisure to become familiar with what the bylaws are that govern our particular committee. And I also asked Kim to link the educational acronyms. I know that we educators at times, just like in other professions, use educational acronyms freely. And those who are not educators sometimes look at us like, what are you trying to say? So FUSD does have a list of educational acronyms for you to look at, and the link is provided for you on the agenda. And if there is an educational acronym that we do use in our conversation and you don't understand, by all means, please interrupt us and ask us and we will explain it to you. So today we're going to look at the minutes from our October 20th meeting. All of you were sent the minutes this morning from Kim. If you would take a few minutes to read them and then suggest any corrections, and then we'll take a motion to approve as corrected if needed.
I'm sorry, Susan, would you move back to the previous agenda item for a minute? I had a couple
Sure.
things on that. Okay.
Kim, are you going to move it back? Because I don't have access to it. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So regarding the agenda, I'm wondering if in the future we might have, in starting today even, if the last 10 minutes, so 5:50 to 6 o'clock, could specifically be discussion on future agenda items rather than just closing, because absolutely what Kim shared is correct. Those oral communications are generally about non-agendized items. But I think that building into our agenda a time for the committee to both process things that they might want to bring forward or things we heard at oral communications would give the group a set aside time. So I'm wondering if that might be possible. And then secondly, I'm wondering if the calendar invitation, is it sent out by email or does it just link to our Google calendars and we need to look for that? Regarding the meeting and the agenda, our bylaws actually state that we're supposed to receive it 5 days ahead of time. And I didn't see anything including the minutes before this morning. And then unfortunately, on top of that, when I saw them, I did not have access. I had to request access. So what that means is not only for me as a community member, I'm also a committee member, right? But that means the community, we want to make sure that the access there is done. And I think that doing that the week ahead of time, like our bylaws, will help have times higher on those things.
You brought up some really good points. Kim and Tushar and I did the agenda collaboratively a couple weeks ago. And we can definitely add 10 minutes at the end of the meeting to talk about future agenda items. As far as the link, I had the same issue that you did, Victoria. And so Kim, I don't know if we could possibly put the link also on the district website so that if people wanted to talk, like the community members, they could, instead of providing their requests in writing.
Yes, so the way this committee is structured, we don't invite members of the public to be online with us. So that's why we have the Google form as a way we can accept public comment. But I do hear what people are saying about maybe finding it challenging to find the Zoom link and also the link to the agenda. And so we can definitely make sure we get that to you via email, in addition to in a calendar invite, more clearly and sooner.
And Victoria, just as a side note, last year we surveyed the C&I committee to see what topics that they wanted to discuss throughout the year. And we did do a survey, and then we categorized them by which ones got the most votes and which one got the least votes. And we calendarized all of our meetings with a specific topic or topics throughout the year. So I welcome using that format again if the folks are interested in doing that, because we want to hear their voices and have them be a part of shared leadership.
That's awesome. Thank you, Susan. So for reference, since this is my first year on the committee,
Right.
would that be in the May minutes, for example, from last year, from 1920? So then we would be able to brush up kind of on that as well, so that we know what you as chair and district management are discussing when you make the agenda. So
We surveyed the people last fall. We didn't do a survey last spring. So we surveyed, if I remember correctly, in October of last year, approximately a month ago. And then in November, we came out with the agenda items for the year and we calendared everything. So for example, last year at this time, elementary assessments were a hot topic, and we spent the entire meeting on elementary assessments and elementary curriculum. And then we also had some other topics, and I can't remember because I don't have the information in front of me, but it was a shared joint effort where people pitched in and said, these are the topics we'd like to talk about. And then we calendarized them for the year.
Susan, may I jump in for a second? Part of what's on our agenda today, in fact, the real kind of big block of time, assuming we can get there, is going to be talking about lots of different things that Fremont Unified is doing to address questions of equity. And I feel like equity makes sense to be the really big umbrella focus for this committee for this year. Even our public speakers clearly spoke to the equity or inequity that they feel that we have in our core and our supplemental novels. But my goal today was, once we get through that equity section of the agenda, to collect input from you about which aspects of that, or maybe things that I didn't even think to mention, are of interest to you. We'll put those into a survey. We'll do the survey between now and our December meeting. And as Susan said, we'll begin to use those as the topics. Not that we can't, at the end of each meeting, give people an opportunity to also make suggestions about future agendas, because I'm sure as one thing comes up, it leads you to think about something else. But at least that survey would give us a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing, so in November in the minute, there are about 20 items that were listed or questions that were put out, which is a great, and maybe if we saw the calendaring or the prioritizing, then it would be a great way, what Kim is saying, we'd be looking kind of at what's coming up, but also the ability to incorporate other items that come up that are of higher need. So as long as there's a way that maybe for us as committee members, we could review that ahead of time. And then for the agenda item, thank you, Kim. That was my next question about what that agenda item meant. Another thing that's problematic about getting the agenda with an item like that is the way that it's phrased, equity focused and member input. I don't have the ability as a teacher representative to see from my educators what specifically. So if I knew that that was representative curriculum or, something like that. And I love, Susan, that you and Kim work to get those educational acronyms in. So just other ways that we can bring people in and the things that the community might not know. But as a community member, that agenda item, there are so many things that we have to discuss. So if at any way possible, we can narrow it down a little bit next time as an agenda item, so people have a better idea about what we prepared with.
Thank you for your input. Thank you. We'll take that in consideration for our next meeting. Thank you. So let's go back to our minutes and take about 2 minutes to read from the minutes from October 20th. And then if we need to make any corrections as needed, we will do so. And then we will approve them accordingly.
Susan, this is Arti here.
Hi,
I'm not
Arti.
able to access the minutes.
Kim, can you help her with that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me stop sharing for a minute.
I can put the minutes into the chat.
Okay, thank you. It's possible too that they are
I changed the sharing settings. I changed them.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
Thank you. We'll have all these little kinks worked out by the next meeting.
The last link I just put in there is the link to the minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Artie.
Susan, are you going to ask us to suggest any amendments in a bit, or can we make them now?
Go ahead.
The only thing I noticed at the very end of the agenda, the minutes, says next meeting December 17, 2019, 4:30 p.m. Technology Lab. I think that might be a carryover from another document because I know I do copy and paste as well. I believe that should be deleted.
Stacy,
Let-
where are you seeing that at? Sorry.
At the very end of the minutes, after adjourned, there's italicized letters.
Okay, on the one I'm looking at, I don't see that.
Yeah,
Neither
Stacy,
do
I think you're looking at the wrong link.
Okay, let me try it again.
You want to look?
I just see the meeting was adjourned at 6:08 p.m.
I was using the link of the first one that was shared with us.
That was the November one from last year in
Oh,
response to Victoria's comment about topics
okay.
prioritized.
I apologize for that. I was reading the wrong one. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing what you were trying to comment on. Okay.
I apologize. There were too many links, and I guess I clicked on a link too soon.
It's okay, Stacy.
Sorry, Susan, I'm not sure how you'd prefer to have us stack. If you just want us popping in. I know it's hard for you to see all of us with the screen share too, so let us know if we get too rowdy, just chiming in. But for the minute, the last motion on parliamentarian, it should note me as parliamentarian with Aishwarya as however we want to designate, whether that's an understudy or an assist, but we would be out of compliance with bylaws to be listing 2 parliamentarians, just as written. So however you want to note that.
Let's note that as assisting.
So Aishwarya is going to assist Victoria as parliamentarian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's how I understood it. Are there any other corrections as needed? Just pop right in and it's okay. Are there any motions to approve the minutes from October 20th? Or is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve last meeting's minutes.
Okay, Tushar approves motions to approve the last minutes. Is there a second?
I'm happy to second. This is Walt.
I'm sorry.
Walt,
Hi,
I'll
Mr.
second.
Lewis. You want to second the second it? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Are there any ayes
Aye.
to approve the minutes? Aye. What do we do? Just put our hands up? Okay.
Aye.
Jamie, how are you going to do this? Are you just counting the number and reflecting it accordingly?
Somebody's going to have to count for me. I can't do both.
Yeah, Aishwarya and I are doing that for voting. So however
That's fine.
Mary went over physical hand is the way that works. And then,
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, do it. Go for it.
Also for minutes, Jamie, for future, it doesn't always have to be noted the number, but we will definitely state the exact vote count whenever there is a question. So ayes, you can go ahead and put hands down.
Are there any nays?
So
Are there
at this,
any-
oh, sorry. So then Jamie, at this time, you could go ahead and note that they were approved unanimously, and that's in lieu of a count.
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you. I can write motion passed and then what?
Unanimously, we wouldn't need because there were no no's.
were there any abstentions? Okay.
I will abstain. This is Arti here because I attended very late. So I will abstain.
Okay.
And the abstentions, as long as the motion carries or fails, the abstentions don't affect whether a motion carries or fails.
Okay, so then the minutes are approved from the October 20th meeting. Our next item on the agenda is the election of a member from this committee to be a part of the Equity Committee as a representative. And the criteria is that you must be an employee, and the very first meeting will be in January on the 12th. Are there any people on the committee that would be interested in representing our committee on the Equity Committee?
Susan, so can you say that again? Because I think so we have FEDTA members present, we have FSMA present, right? So it has to be.
It has to be an FUSD employee.
Okay.
And again, the first meeting's not until January 12th. So are there any employees of FUSD who are interested in representing the C&I committee for the Equity Committee?
Susan, how often are the meetings?
That's a good question. It's my understanding, I don't have the calendar in front of me. They're like 4 or 5 meetings. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kim.
Yeah, I can display. There are 5 meetings, Stacy. One in January, one in February, one in March, one in April, and one in May. And they're always on the second Tuesday of the month from 6 p.m. to 7:30. So this meeting's on the 3rd Tuesday. It would be the Tuesday preceding this one. And the function of that person would be to carry information back and forth between the 2 committees. And also just, as Susan said, to be our representative, to be the voice of the C&I Advisory Committee on that overarching umbrella of an equity committee. Is that something you might be willing to do, Stacy?
I'm interested if no one else volunteers.
That's fine. So we're going, do we vote on that? I believe we do.
I would imagine.
Yes. Okay, all in favor for Stacy to represent the C&I committee at the Equity Committee? All those in favor, raise your hands.
That should be fine.
Are there any nays? Are there any abstentions? Okay, congratulations, Stacy. You're our representative.
And thank you very
Jamie,
much.
you can note that unanimously again.
Stacy, thank you so much for your willingness to do this for us and add yet another meeting to your world. I'm sure you spend hours on Zoom every week, and we really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
I do, but I know that equity is very important, and I wanted to make sure that this committee is represented. So that's why I said I would volunteer if no one else was interested.
Great, thank you. We appreciate it.
Susan, I have a quick question. This is Sejal.
Sure.
So can you just tell us a little more about this committee? Is it brand new or is it something that existed? And secondly, why only an FUSD employee, just more out of curiosity and not just any member of this committee?
And I can speak to that if you'd like me to, Susan.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the Equity Committee is a committee that our board trustees put together. And one of the really strong goals of the Equity Committee would be that there was some balanced representation among all different aspects of our community, employees and parents and just community members and such as that. And Michelle, please jump in if I'm not doing this justice. All right. So in order to achieve that goal of balance, one of the things that we couldn't do would be, for instance, have each committee, well, let me back up. There are a number of committees in the district who are each sending a representative into the Equity Committee. Our DLAC committee, our Wellness Committee, I can't think of them all right off the top of my head, but in order for there to be a balance between employees and parents, the board trustees just said certain committees are going to send a parent representative and certain committees are going to send an employee representative. And by stipulating that, that was how they were able to maintain the balance for that committee. It was, as far as I understand, pretty much just a random assigning from committee to committee. And please, Trustee Burke, I encourage you to correct what I've said or add to it.
I'm having problems with hearing you. It comes out garbled for me from time to time. I will, what I did hear, yes, was accurate.
Okay, thank you. Sejal, does that make sense as to why it needs to be an employee?
Oh, yes, yes, totally. Thank you.
And you had a second question, Sejal.
Just a little more on the Equity Committee, like what it is. And I think, Kim, you sort of did answer that, right?
Okay. You know what? I highly recommend that you go to our district website and under the Parents tab, they have listed all the committees for our districts and periodically they do have committees where they're asking for parents to be involved. It just depends on the committee. But it's a very nice page to go and look at when you have some time.
Sure.
And I do think that to a certain degree, the exactly what form this committee is going to take and how it's going to function is an evolving process, because it is a brand new committee for us. And this is really the first time as a district we've put such a direct focus on equity. So there is a little, there's a little bit of figuring out as we go.
Sure.
This is Arti here. I have a question again related to this this person from our committee who would be on the Equity Committee. Would we be able to give input to this person to take to that committee?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really the main function would be as a communication tool back and forth between our committee and the Equity Committee.
Thank you.
Kim, could we send out, would you want people to directly contact Stacy if they wanted to reach out to her, or do you want them to go through the committee?
I'll tell you what, the good news is that the Equity Committee doesn't meet till January and we're going to meet in December. Let me do a little bit more research and I'll bring some more information back to this committee next month.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Susan, sorry, two things. So one, before we move off of that, so Stacy made the motion herself to volunteer, and while both you as the chair and Kim Kelly spoke in support of that, typically neither a non-voting member as Kim is nor you as chair would be listed as a second. So we actually need a second to be listed, which I am happy to do for Stacy's motion for herself to be that position.
Thank you, Victoria.
And then the other piece of that, just as you had brought up and following up onto Artie's question, for a committee recommendation or as described for that conduit, it should only be committee recommendations that Stacy carries forward rather than individual members of the committee soliciting Stacy to bring those forward. So I think that that's a great idea to have the committee, and sometimes we could agendize it even if Stacy knows something's going to be on that agenda, and we could specifically discuss and come up with a recommendation that we want Stacy to bring to that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So we're a little bit behind schedule, but the conversations are good. Thank you. Our next agenda item is on revising the norms. And I know, Kim, you met with a couple people that were willing to work with you on that. Do you want to report out on that part, Kim?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So a team of us met. As you may remember, or maybe if you weren't here, let me just kind of catch you up. Last month, we began a conversation about what the norms might be for our committee. And we started with the basis of the norms that we had used for in the previous years, with no expectation that we had to keep them, but that was just at least a starting point for us. Most of the norms were something we were comfortable with, but there was one norm that had a little bit of conversation, and we were not able in a timely manner to come to an agreement on the wording for that norm. And so what we did is we convened a group of volunteers. Everyone was welcome to join, and a few people did. And we came up with a proposal for some wording that could work instead. And so what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to display my screen.
Kim, could you share with the committee who was working with you on redoing that part of the norms?
Yes.
Okay.
So Tushar and I and Trustee Burke joined in at the end with an agreement.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember, Sejal, were you there with us? No, okay.
I think Ms. Sharma was here.
I
Or
actually, I
was there
tried,
with us? Yeah.
Shilpa was supposed to join, right?
Right. Great. Oh, that's right. Parul, you helped us. That's right. I was trying to remember who was the additional, I can see it. Yes, so Parul was there, and Tushar and myself, and Trustee Burke contacted me right as we were ending the meeting, and I was able to kind of run it by her. So, so that was the process that we used. So why don't you let me go ahead and show you the wording that we'd like to propose. And again, this is just a proposal, hopefully done to increase just the efficiency of our opportunity to keep the meeting moving forward. So the item that was of question was down near the bottom where it says confidentiality. And the concern was that the original agenda, or the original norm, said refrain from posting on social media about the committee. And there was some conversation that maybe that limited people's opportunity to solicit input or to share information with the people that they represent. And so we offered some additional wording, and that's in red. So to the original norm, we're suggesting saying refrain from posting confidential or negative information about the committee, and that we would be posting for informational purposes only. So let's see. Hopefully people can still see that. So then, Susan, do you want to lead this discussion, or would you like me to lead this?
You can lead it, Kim, because you worked on it. Go ahead.
Okay, well, so then I would open this up for conversation. If this is wording that you're comfortable with, we can entertain a motion. If somebody would like to suggest something different, we can. And I'm just going to ask that we balance the time we spend on this. Clearly, we want this to be representative and something we're all comfortable with. And we also kind of want to keep the meeting moving. So does anybody want to comment on this or make a motion?
Kim, I have a question. I think we discussed already that nothing here is confidential. Is that accurate?
Well, given that it's being broadcast publicly, that it's being recorded, the recording is made available, there really isn't anything, that would be said in the main group that would be confidential.
Yeah, so I would like to take that off, because I think that it unfortunately it implies to the public that there may be confidential things that it feels not good, even though it's totally unnecessary, because we're a completely transparent committee. So it doesn't seem like an appropriate thing for a norm unless there's some other aspect that the subcommittee discussed.
Okay.
I would like to add to this conversation since Artie here. I agree with the part where there is really nothing confidential about the things we discuss. However, I feel that because of the polarized environment we live in these days, when a committee member makes a statement about the committee's work, we do need to have some norms around that. Coming from that perspective, I think there should be just a norm to guide that if a committee member was to make a statement about the committee's work on social media, for example, they would do so as maybe as an individual, not as a committee, just to delineate that. You see what I'm just concerned about? Maybe things can be misinterpreted when a member says it maybe as an opinion of what they've understood, but not necessarily as the voice of the committee.
Yeah, Mr. Banerjee.
Yeah, I understand actually everything that we are saying right now is broadcasted. So I think our conversation is by definition public. My question is when we have subcommittees like we are now reviewing English, so literature, supplemental instruction, that's a different subcommittee. So that's not exactly the same as this one, right? So that norm will be different, but anything we say here in this public meeting, it's broadcasted, nothing is confidential, right? Is that my understanding? Is that right?
Yes. So it sounds like you're agreeing with Victoria that the words confidential or are probably unnecessary here. So refrain from posting negative information to social media about the committee would cover it.
Yeah, I agree with that word.
Is there a motion?
Sorry, the other piece I wanted clarification on for this from the subcommittee, because this was part of the discussion last time, when it says something like post for informational purposes only, I want to know that as a representative, whether that is in a parent group or for us, for our educator group, that we would be able to ask things like, what kind of benefit do you see when doing a more diverse supplemental book currently? Like what kind of things are you seeing that this benefits the students in what way? It's not informational. I would be soliciting input from the members that I represent because I don't teach English, I teach math. So I think that the post for informational purposes only hamstrings a little bit. And I would similarly want parents to be able to reach out to other parents. Like, hey, this is an agenda item coming up, and we want to hear what kind of experiences students and families and parents are having. So that part as well, I don't think is realistic, but I absolutely hear what Artie's saying, and I think what Susan shared earlier. We don't want our own committee members attacking the work of the committee. That would be that negative aspect. We want people to post for the purposes of furthering the progress. So my proposal would instead be a bullet that says posting about the committee for social media shall be with the express purpose of furthering the goals of the committee, without mentioning positive or negative.
Is that a motion that you're making?
Victoria, say that again. I'm sorry. Say that again.
Sure. Posting to social media about the committee shall be for the purpose of furthering progress of the committee.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Does anyone want a second?
I'll
I
second.
can second that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Artie here.
Okay, thank you, Artie. We'll take yours. Okay. Any discussion around that, or are we ready to vote? Okay, seeing no discussion, by raised hands, if you would like to approve the motion, the wording as it was proposed, raise your hand.
Kim, can you do Ashwarya and I a huge favor and stop screen sharing for when we count votes?
Yes.
I know that's a pain to go back and forth, but it'll help
No.
out. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay.
All right. And Jamie, were you able to capture that wording in the minutes?
I have that Victoria Verbecker proposed this bullet posting to social media about the committee is to be about the purpose of furthering the progress of the committee.
Shall be with the purpose.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Then I will take it as an action item during this, before our next meeting to get the norms updated. Thank you very much.
Jamie, I wrote it down just for your information. Did we
Oops, all opposed?
Yeah, we didn't have, do we have any nays? And do we have any abstentions? Okay, then the motion passes.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't catch who motioned and who seconded.
Victoria was the original motion
Uh-huh.
and Artie was the second.
Okay, thank you.
And there were no nays and no abstentions from what I can see.
Yeah. So that was unanimous, but I don't think that we took, so I think my motion was only specifically on that bullet. I think that we would still need a second motion to adopt the norms in their entirety. Because I don't think that we took a vote on that last time that I saw in the minutes. But is anyone seeing other?
Would anybody like to move that we approve the minutes? Or I'm sorry, not the minutes. Okay, time to go home. Day's over. Approve the norms.
I make a motion that we approve the new norms.
Thank you,
second.
Thank you, Stacy. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. You may put down your hands. Anyone opposed? No. Any abstentions? No. Okay, looks like the motion carries.
Okay, our next section is going to be the meat of our conversations tonight on Fremont's equity focus and member input. And it's my understanding that Kim and Tushar and I will be working on different slides throughout this presentation. Kim, do you want to pull it up?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll let you start, Kim, and you do your part, and then I'll chime in, as my dear friend Arthi says, when it's my part and Tushar's part.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so what I'd like to do to start this presentation, or this piece of the presentation, is just to show you a cartoon. I guess it's a cartoon, a picture. And it is a representation of the difference between the definition of the word equality and the word equity. And I think as a society, as we are becoming more and more aware of equity issues, there's an importance that we understand our definitions of our wording very, very carefully. So what I'd like to have you do is I'd like to have you just take a moment, take a look at the picture. And then what I'm going to do is have us move to the chat. And in the chat, I'd just like to have you type in your answer to this question. And that is, how is this picture similar to or different from your equity, kind of what you've held in your own mind? So take a last look at this. And then we're going to start using the chat feature. Now, the chat feature on your screen is in the upper right-hand corner. you'll see that you have a box that has our participant count. The piece in the middle is the chat, and then the piece on the right side would be where we would use breakout groups and some other tools. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing here. And what I'm going to ask people to do is just think about that question. How is this picture similar to or different from your idea of equity? And you can just click that chat button. It will open up the chat window for you. Go ahead, type in your thought. When you press return, it's going to post your thought to the group. And let's just take a couple minutes and type some chats in there and have a chance to hear from our committee members. So I'm just going to start reading some of these out. Michelle tells us there's actually a third picture with no fence, and that would mean taking down all the barriers rather than having to compensate so people could work around the barriers. Aishwarya tells us giving people the resources. Let's see, where did I go here? Giving people the resources they need according to their individual needs in order to achieve equal opportunities. Victoria says equity does not mean equality. Michelle adds to her comment, and without those barriers, individuals have equitable opportunities. Is there anybody who is unsure where we're posting or where we're reading? I don't want anyone to be excluded from this conversation. Walt says equity doesn't mean everyone gets the same thing. Equity means everyone gets what's needed to meet the same goals. Equity to me is what we do to ensure equitable outcomes for all. Equity is also a journey, and equality is the destination. I like that.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Yeah, thoughtful comments. I'm seeing the idea of opportunities coming up a lot. And then of course the question is exactly how do we go about doing this? Clearly it is not a simple thing. It's something that's going to take us a lot of thought and a lot of time and a lot of listening to one another in order to move ourselves forward on this journey, on this goal. All right, you're welcome to keep posting if you want. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to presenting, and this is where Susan and Tushar are going to help me a little bit. What I'm going to go through is just a list of some of the things that are happening in Fremont Unified now that are giving us an opportunity to think about how we are approaching all of what we do with a lens on equity. And there are maybe, I think there may be like 11 bullets here. So we're just going to kind of piggyback back and forth, and we're going to talk about in general what each one of them are. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us out into some breakout rooms and give you a chance to talk with a few of your fellow members about just what kinds of questions do you even have as you see these. And then from those questions, those are the things that we're going to use to build the survey that we're going to send out. So we're going to move through these fairly quickly because I want to make sure you have plenty of time in your breakout groups to talk.
Kim, I'm sorry if I missed it, but is this presentation available to the public?
We have not historically made the presentation available other than the fact that, of course, it's in the recorded session.
Okay, and then the chat is not available to the public either, is it?
That I believe is true. I'd have to double check that with Luis, but I believe that is true.
Okay, and then what about breakout rooms?
Breakout rooms will not, I don't believe, be part of what is publicly broadcast.
Okay, and then for the survey, I'm not sure if this was something that was coming, long time coming, or if we were going to discuss today what the goal is for the survey.
So the goal that at least as Susan and I and Tushar talked about it would be that it would guide agendas moving forward, because we would be able to identify which topics were of the high interest to the most members of the committee. We only meet, I don't know, maybe 6 more times during the year, so we aren't going to be able to discuss everything. So the survey helps us narrow that focus. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start working through these. So one of the things, and you heard this come up quite a bit in our public comment. In fact, I think this was really what all the public comments were about. One of the steps that we're taking is that we are re-looking at the novels that are our core and our supplemental novels. Now, the difference between core novels and supplemental novels is this. Core novels are required reading at a grade level. So presumably every student, say, who finishes 9th grade will have been exposed to the 9th grade core novels. Supplemental novels are novels that a teacher may choose that have been approved for use in our curriculum, but that are not something that every student would necessarily hear. It would be based on a teacher's choice. So both our core novels and our supplemental novels, as you heard from our public comment, there's a really strong push that we need more diversity there. So that's one thing that we're working on with equity focus. Something else, and Tushar, I think you were going to speak to this one, right, about the ethnic studies. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, so another thing that a lot of people especially are pushing for now is an ethnic studies class to be mandated for high school graduation, which also had some push on the entire statewide level. But I believe that it was not signed by Governor Newsom, and they'll be revisiting it at a later point. But that's just like another example of an increasing focus on equity and more diverse curriculum.
Thank you, Tushar.
Thank you.
Another place that we are aware of equity issues is around our comprehensive health and sexuality curriculum. The content of that is guided by the California Healthy Youth Act, and the California Healthy Youth Act recognizes that there is diversity in sexual expression and such as that, and makes sure that the curriculum that we're using is respectful and inclusive. Something else that we're working on in terms of equity is just the availability of classes at different high schools. Tushar, is that something you'd like to speak to?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been asking about like why are some classes offered at some high schools but not others. For example, AP classes being offered at different grade levels across the high schools. And also something else was that we saw John F. Kennedy now has like an African American history class. And I know that some students were asking if something similar could be instituted at the other high schools.
Great, thank you. Another place that we're aware we have issues around equity and fairness just has to do with exposure to environmental education, which students are given an opportunity to attend science camp, which schools might have gardens, which schools have recycling programs. And that appreciation for our environment and learning about the environment, as we all know, is very important. And so that's a place we need to make sure we're focusing our equity efforts. Another place that we address equity is in our Local Control Accountability Plan, which is the acronym LCAP. It's a funding source that gives additional funds to be used for students that are in the category called unduplicated students, which would be our English learners, our homeless, and our foster youth. So LCAP funding is one source for the district of being able to provide some additional resources and some additional support to make our opportunities more equal.
Sorry, Kim, on that one, homeless foster youth is actually one category. The free and reduced lunch, low socioeconomics is actually the third group on that one.
Great. Thank you.
And then could you go back to the comprehensive health and sexuality curriculum? Because I think I'm understanding the equity focus or discrepancies for these other areas, but do we have issues now currently regarding even after the tons of work that you and your department and everyone did, that we are seeing issues with that again, or still?
No, that's a great question. There really aren't any issues. I put it on the list only because it encourages us to, and legally requires us to make sure that a diverse representation of the population is acknowledged and respected. Not that it's something we necessarily are in the process of changing, simply that it is a place people can be recognized for who they uniquely are. Susan, can I ask you to talk about inclusion classes for special education?
So in our district, there are several schools at the elementary level that have what are called inclusion classes. And what are inclusion classes? And I'll speak specifically just at my school. I work at Mattis Elementary, which is a science magnet technology school. And we started doing the groundwork for having inclusion classes approximately less than 2 years ago. And what we had at our school previously were regular general education classes at each grade level, from kindergarten to the 6th grade, where children who were gen ed kids were in those particular classes. Then in a separate classroom, we had children who needed more support, and they were in special day classes. Well, at our school, we decided as a staff that we wanted to become an inclusion school. And what does that mean? At our particular school, the children who are in the special day classes and the general ed classes are in one classroom, but there are 2 teachers along with a couple of paraeducators for support. And so we started last year small, and we started with kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And we focused on those 3 grades to have one inclusion class at each grade level. So keep in mind, when you have 2 teachers, a special ed teacher and a general education teacher working with the students. And I believe we had 28 gen ed kids, don't quote me on this, and I believe 5 special day children in one class. They got a lot of individualized attention. But more importantly, what happened was some of our special needs children were very high readers. And so when they were in the gen ed class, they could just fly and progress in that particular area. And then if they needed support in math, they got it. What we saw after a year of being an inclusion school at kindergarten through 2nd grade was that our scores in those particular classes surpassed the regular gen ed classes because of the amount of support that our children got. So this
Susan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say your passion and your support for this program is super evident.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll just say one sentence. So this year, I apologize, Kim. This year, we extended it to grade 5. So we're entirely an inclusion school. Sorry, I didn't mean to dominate the conversation.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm going to think there may be an opportunity as the year goes on for us to dive more deeply into this, and we will absolutely tap your expertise. So thank you so much for that,
You're welcome.
that summary.
This is Michelle.
Yes, Michelle, go ahead.
Just to add that we also have an inclusion program at Horner Middle School. That
Oh, that's good to know.
it went up from Hirsch to Horner, and then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, there are 5 elementary schools that are that have inclusion programs.
Yes, I don't know all the names of all the schools. That's why I didn't say them, but thank you for sharing that, Michelle.
Yeah. And Kim, if I could also just add, along with the, when we were talking about why the California Healthy Youth Act, maybe it's going to come up, but the FAIR Act is also relevant here in terms of making sure that our curriculum is, has representation and identifies LGBTQ community members who have made significant contributions. So in whatever content area, if you will, whether it's social studies or science or math, we would identify the great things that a person has contributed as well as their identity.
Thank you so much. And I didn't remember to put the FAIR Act on this. So thank you, Michelle, very much for your sharing your thoughts on both of those. We briefly mentioned the Equity Committee, and we'll know more about that as we get a little farther along, but that's something else that the district is doing in order to just really maintain this focus on equity. Strangely enough, the report cards that we have implemented for our elementary students, which are now standards-based, are actually an important move forward in equity because students are being graded on their knowledge as opposed to being graded on some other things like getting their homework done or how much they contribute in class, which for some students, those things may be a challenge and they may have driven their grades down in the past. So our focus now is on proof of mastery. We are offering intervention classes, have in the past, and will continue to offer intervention opportunities. Sometimes that means we have an additional adult join a class. Sometimes students are work in a small group. Sometimes they leave the classroom to work in a small group. But we've got lots of different intervention programs and processes in place that we can talk about if that's something that interests you. And then the last item that I wanted to make you aware of is something that is coming around the corner in elementary school, and it's a very well-respected student discipline plan called PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavioral Intervention and Support. And it is a companion program to the program that is already in place in our secondary schools, which is restorative practices. Both of these focus on helping students make good choices without being punitive in ways that are educational as opposed to punitive. So as I mentioned, this is just a quick list. I'll give you one more second to just glance through it, and then I'm going to stop sharing again. All right, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to put everybody out into what we call breakout rooms. So if we were in a conference room, we'd be saying, hey, a group of people go to that corner and a group in that corner and a group in a group. And it's just an opportunity for you to talk to a smaller subset of people in the committee. And what I'd like to do is give us about 5 minutes or so out in our breakout groups. And what I'd like to have you have the conversation about is, after we went through that list super quickly, and you could see just from each of those topics could very well turn out to be an entire day's conversation. Which of those do you find to be the most interesting and the most compelling, or places where you'd like to know more, places where you'd like to have an opportunity to share your own thoughts, share your input because you are an advisory group? And so that'll be the conversation. You'll be in the breakout room for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to bring everybody back together, and then I'll just give everybody a chance to kind of share out what some of those thoughts were about things they found interesting or are curious about. And there may also be topics, as Michelle mentioned, the FAIR Act, which I had forgotten to put on this list, but there may be other topics that you think, you know what, I'm kind of interested in knowing about this. So that's what we're going to do. So the way the breakout rooms are going to work is that I'm going to put us into 4 rooms. So they're going to be about 4 people in each breakout room, 4 or 5. And I'm going to open the rooms up. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to do 5 rooms.
We have 18 people.
Yeah, 5 rooms puts 3 or 4 people in each room, which is good for conversation. I'm going to open the room. Through the magic of Zooming, you're going to disappear and reappear in another room. You'll stay there for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to call everybody back. So we'll see you in about 5 minutes. Enjoy your conversations. Yes, Luis? Probably until we come back, because I don't think that that the breakout rooms can be broadcast, right? That'd be perfect. Thank you. All right, Luis, I'm going to close the rooms and bring everybody back. It says I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Hello.
Welcome back, everybody.
We weren't ready.
I'm sorry. We'll do more of this.
Same here.
We will have more opportunities to talk. It's sort of like Narnia, where you just go into the closet and then you come alive in a different land. But thank you guys for being willing to experiment and let me kind of stumble around a little bit through this. So I'm hoping that you had some interesting conversations. I'm betting that you did. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to kind of do 2 things at once, because I know you're just a room full of multitaskers. I'm going to turn on a process called the Q&A. And I believe, let's see, maybe, Walt, I see your microphone's on. Can you see some sort of a place now where you could type in a question?
No, just the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you guys go to where you see the chat, there should be a little icon that shows a triangle, a square, and a circle.
Oh, yeah.
If you click onto that, then you'll get 3 options: breakout rooms, polls, and Q&A. If you click on Q&A, at the very bottom, there's a little plus sign that says ask a question. That's where you can pose a question.
All right, I see Mr. Banerjee's there. He put a test question out there. Give you a second to navigate there.
Kim, when you say put a question, what do you mean put a question?
Yep, so thank you very much, Sue. So what I'd love to do now, kind of 2 things at once. As I said, we're so interested in hearing which aspects of equity, either the ones that I quickly summarized or other things, are you most interested in? And this is the list from which we're going to build the survey. So if you had something come up in your room that you would really like to have be on that survey, go ahead and type it into the question. But I also would love to open up a conversation. If there was something that came up in your room that you feel would be of interest to the group, just open up your microphone. You don't have to wait for me to call on you, and share the conversation that went on. And I'll just ask us to remember our norm about step up and step back. If you've had a chance to share, then maybe you want to step back and let somebody else have a chance to share. So I open it up. Who had conversation that they would like to share with the group? And I see we're starting to get some questions built into the Q&A as well. Yeah, Mr. Banerjee, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, so one of the things that we were discussing, I think was PBIS, and then also was on what we did in Mattis Elementary
Yes.
with, I think it is more like a synergy where we get like 2 + 2 is not just 4, but 5 because of the partnership, because when there are more diverse people come together, they share their knowledge and perspective, and that helps each other out. But also, this is particularly for the class where the special day needs, special day students came to a general ed class, and both of them got something out of it, which helped the performance and the grade levels of those kids. And that was very helpful, I think, for me.
Thank you for sharing that.
And if I may add, Mr. Banerjee, and I won't go on, our school kids come from all over the city, and we're very diverse. They're from all different backgrounds and socioeconomic backgrounds too.
This is Arti here. We were in breakout room 2. Again, this is related to special education. I have a special ed child, and I felt that one of the things that would be helpful, not only to special ed, but to a lot of kids who have different abilities, is technology. And I feel that we, if we have more richer data in terms of, let's say, college readiness, how are kids faring, special ed kids or other kids, how are we faring in terms of college readiness, and can technology help you? What kind of technology would that be, and are we actually being able to provide that to these kids? So I felt like technology was an area we could include as an area of focus in curriculum and instruction. And there was a second part, and this again comes up to me through the special ed classes, but I think it would be helpful to everybody. And one of the services not available to us is ABA therapy, something that is applied behavior interventions, but I'm not necessarily looking for an intervention. I'm looking for it as a way to help these kids. Most of the time it's out of their own, let's say they're overwhelmed in a social situation, maybe in a gen ed class, or it's that they process stimulus in a different way. And how do you help them in a curriculum situation to process that? So I felt like there was, although it Victoria pointed out, nice thing, Victoria, you said it better than I'm able to right now, but it's part of the positive behavior that we're trying to talk about, but it might be a pointer that refers to applied behavior as a way to integrate it better. Again, especially is the reason why I bring it up, but I feel that there's a number of general ed and neurotypical children that would also benefit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. We talked about, well, a lot of things in our group in that short time. Some of it, the overall curriculum, the core novels. We did say that we didn't think any one of these had to be done sequentially, but that a lot of work can be done simultaneously, and that we really need to keep the eye on, across the district. And then one of the things I was thinking about as we were talking in here that we haven't mentioned yet is the recent microaggressions and mental health panel that our students have put together. And what we learned from that is that daily there are, microaggressions that occur in our schools, and that there's a number of things that play with that. And I think to delve into that a little bit more, not a little bit, but to delve into that more deeply, again, across the district, what does this look like at a particular school? How can we help each other understand the impact of that? And some of that comes from our curriculum, some of that comes from teaching practices, some of that comes from the students themselves. And so I think it's a huge conversation, but it needs to be addressed.
Right, thank you. Probably have time for one more, something that came out of a conversation. Does anybody have something they'd really like to share?
Mr. Lewis, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to share with us what you shared with in our group, if you don't mind?
Well, I don't mind ending up under that bus. I'm good. Let's see. So we were talking a little bit about equitable access of courses, and especially our AP and honors courses, and really thinking about, disproportionality, or actually who's in those courses. And so our conversation kind of centered around really talking about what are the criteria for these courses, and what are we doing as a system when we see that data that really does show that there is a huge amount of disproportionality. So that is something that I'm interested in on a more district-wide level. We work on our data here at the site, but really on the district-wide level, trying to figure out where some of those disproportionalities in middle schools or in high schools or even in elementary schools, I guess, might be, and what are the practices of program that might be contributing to that. So that's just, that is something that I would like to know more about if we ever have the opportunity, but thanks for asking.
Thank you. All right, my goal is that this is the first of many conversations that we have around, broadly around equity, and then just a deeper dive into some of these narrow aspects. Thank you to everybody who put something in the Q&A. Thank you to everybody who contributed to a conversation in a breakout room or shared out here. Every voice is important. Each one of you are on this committee because you bring something unique and special. And so we want to make sure that we hear from each person. We are going to go ahead and close up the meeting. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Susan, and you can close it up for us.
Are there, I want to go back to the point that was made at the beginning of the meeting. Are there any other topics that you would like us to discuss this year that we could put out in a survey to you before the next meeting?
And I'm thinking maybe in the survey too, Susan, we include a text space. So if somebody thinks of something in the next few days, they would have an opportunity to add that in to the survey as well.
Okay. Are there any other questions before we close for today?
Yeah, I'm just wondering on the structure of the survey. So the items that were on that slide that you went through, but for example, the comprehensive and compliant health and sexuality education was on there, but there aren't any action items or changes that need to be made. Are we as a committee going to be just seeing a bunch, like a list of items, and then voting or prioritizing those items? Is that the format of the survey we would expect? And is this only an internal survey for us as committee members to do that organization?
So the idea of the survey is that it is going to be used to determine at least the next few agendas. So from that perspective, yes, it's an internal document as opposed to one for which we'd solicit input from other people. The way we've done it in the past that was effective is that we've listed particular topics and you could indicate whether this was something of high interest to you, of medium interest, or of low interest. And then from that, we came up with kind of a composite score for each item, and we worked our way from the items that had the highest score to the items that had the lowest score. We won't be able to talk in depth about every aspect of equity, but if we can take a deep dive into 5 or 6 of them over the course of the year, then I think that that'll be really valuable.
Okay, great. Then my last question is the only piece I didn't see for agenda setting. Per our bylaws, we would be informed of impending items coming to the board. So for example, in December, we know that the board is going to be discussing reopening. And I'm just throwing, that's the one that I know of. But if there are any other items on curriculum, any other items from the board that we know about for December or January, would we normally get those in this meeting and then decide, is that something we should spend time?
Generally speaking, no, we don't do that.
Okay,
Correct
it
me
is
if
in
I'm
our
wrong.
bylaws, so I guess that would be just a decision. Is that something we want to continue doing for our bylaws, or do we not find any relevance or weighing in on upcoming board agenda items?
How about if you have thoughts on that, I welcome your sending an email to me. You can also CC Susan and Tushar if you'd like to, so the 3 of us see those emails and we'll collect input in that way.
And I don't know if the trustees, Michelle, since you're here, is there anything that you would want the committee to consider that you know is upcoming?
I'm not going to comment on that.
I would like to propose, Kim, if we could possibly get together with Tushar and send out a survey when we come back from Thanksgiving, asking the membership of this committee what potential items that they would be interested in talking about, and say at the beginning of right when we come back, and then survey our membership, and then come up with a draft for the next from December until May of possible agenda items.
Sounds like a good plan. Yep. Okay, why don't you go ahead and close us up for tonight?
Thank you all for coming this evening. I hope you all have a very restful and enjoyable time with your families and loved ones during this pandemic. And we will see you again on December 15th at 4:30 p.m. Thank you so much for your time and for your collaboration and your input. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.